Hola, coolers, and welcome back to Fullback, your weekly breakdown of everything that has happened at FC Barcelona. And this week, folks, we have a myriad of things to talk about. We have contract extensions, we have existential questions about the future of football. We do have, as always, some injury concerns and injury updates for Barca.
Nothing too dramatic by Barca standards. There's so much happening. It could have been worse. Of course, we had the whole injury segment to look after. And the good thing is that national football is over and there are 3 games that can make or break the third season that are coming up. So looking forward to unpacking all of that on that show.
I think we should start with something that's a bit more positive, something that we've been waiting for a long time. And some people even thought that this was never going to happen. And that's Frankie de Jong's contract extension. It's a big saga. Now it's over. We know he's staying until 2029. And I think now we've come to a place where most fans are actually happy about it. Not everyone, obviously, but most of them are. So your initial thoughts, Dev?
I think his combination with Pedri is probably one of the best midfield combinations in the world. I hesitate to say it's the best, but it's one of the best. So the fact that it can continue, that gives me happiness. The second thing that I'm practical and pragmatic about is that if not Frankie, then who? And do we have the money to get a player of his caliber? There's a lot of talk about his selling and his salary that has gone on. But if you look into dispassionately games that Barca has won, more often than not, Frankie has had a good role to play in them and has been a reason for Barca's recent success. If you look into his performance after he came back from the long injury last year under Flick, the second half of the season, he was absolutely essential. And the fact that we don't have Gavi's been missing for a couple of seasons, I think we're lucky to have Frankie, and we talked about it in the last episode as well. I'm happy that he's there. I'm happy that he's part of the team.
I feel like when you're a Barca team, any Barca iteration, whether that's Flick or Pep or Lucha, whoever it is, the midfield is always the important thing. But let's get a bit deeper into that contract, because now we know, okay, it was 2026 previously, now it's 2029, and the wages have obviously changed. Everyone wants to know about the wages. And now he was earning, what was he earning before? Like 23 million gross per year. And now
7.
But now, apparently, according to new reports, this is now what, in the range of 19 to 23 million gross. And then that would make it what?
Net 10 million net, 11 million.
Yeah, 9 million net, which is, it sounds much better. It sounds like Barca have made the right move. But can you tell us a bit more about that deal there, like specifically the numbers, and how does that impact Barca's wages at the moment?
I think the wages were being affected because of many other reasons. It was not just Frankie's large wage causing all our issues in illustration. We still have more than 150 million unpaid in player transfer fees. And that was much higher 2 years ago. And then there was a huge amount of salary that was unpaid during COVID that the club was paying off. So if you look at it, fundamentally from 27 gross to, I don't know, maybe it's 20 gross.
20 gross.
But 7 million gross in a whole year, does it really change Barca's financial situation? No, it doesn't. He has adjusted his salary in line with how Barca is looking to make the salary structure. Everybody's around that 10, 11 kind of net scale, the senior players. So I think that fits in with Barca's salary structure. It doesn't really make a huge difference in our wage bill adjustment.
His release clause has increased from 400 million to 500 million euros. Obviously, no one's going to pay that much money to get a player, any player. I don't think that matters as much, but still, it's kind of nice to see. And it's Barca's message to everyone, say, okay, this guy is the crucial part of our team. This guy is practically not for sale. That's what we're trying to tell other suitors in the market. And you said that there's no one else, even if we sold Frankie for an incredible sum, who do you go in the market and get to replace it? There's no one there to actually do what Frankie does. And I don't know if many players would create that synergy with Pedri that we spoke about earlier, Dev. So I think from that perspective, not just financial, sportingly as well, this is the right move for Barca. Now, obviously, by 2029, we can reassess and see, okay, maybe Frankie is getting old, maybe Frankie is not we thought he was. I don't know. We could go into that once we get there. But at the moment, it seems like a positive thing.
All the noise has died down. Now we know that Frankie is here till 2029. Simple. He can focus on the football. He can focus on what he does best. And one thing that has always hit me is players who play with him have always come back and talked about how technical, how good he is. And these are players who play football for a living. He's definitely better than me sitting here giving my opinion. So when so many players of that kind, Eric Garcia, Marc Bernal, there's so many people who have Lionel Messi himself, if they come up and say that, no, this is a player who has elite skills, you go with it. From a player perspective, we couldn't have asked for a better news given our situation in the transfer markets and given our economic state.
This part of people or players rather saying Frankie is this good. He's unbelievable. He is one of the most underrated players in the whole team, if not one of the very best in the whole team. You look for the things that are not necessarily good indicators of quality or value. We watch a game of football where Frankie de Jong is doing incredible stuff, but to an untrained eye, it doesn't seem that way. So we resort to social media and we say, oh, no, he was invisible. He was doing this or that. No, players and coaches see it differently, right? Because Frankie, as you can argue that his value or his input to this team has been more or less depending on the season, but he's always been there, right? Always been picked, always been in those lineups, always been one of the first names on every coach's list, right? So bottom line, Dev, this is a good thing financially and sportingly, and long may it continue.
Let's move to the next story of the day, which is probably the most interesting story. The story broke on The Athletic that Real Madrid is looking to finally move away from the Socio model, which is the club-owned model, to taking outside investments. Obviously, that causes a lot of stir because it's Madrid, right? There are 3 more clubs like that in Spain, which is Barcelona, Osasuna. So when Madrid takes a leaf out of that book, what does it mean for the Socio model? So we'll talk about that, and we'll go a little bit into what does that mean and compare it with the elephant in the room, which is the state-owned clubs and of Champions League, and how do you keep winning Champions League if you can't invest like that?
It's a tricky situation because on one hand, we are talking again about the soul and heart of football. In the previous episodes, guys, remember we talked about Barça going to Miami and what that means for football in general, the globalization of football and the business side of football. Well, that's much along the same lines, I would say. And basically, for those of you that don't know, you have these certain clubs who are unique in football, I would say, where you have a club that is owned by its members, right? That's why we say it's a member-owned club, because they have these socios or socies who pay an annual fee, and then in return for that, they get voting rights, right? They can elect the president, they can approve some decisions, they can essentially, to a certain extent, control the club. It's a very romantic way to look at football because ultimately the fans make the club anyway, right? That's what Barça is, for example, all about. The coolest, they make the club what it is, they make it more than a club. So to take that away and go into business model that will give you financial superiority, but you lose that fan touch. Now, is that worth it? I don't know. It is a demand of modern football that you have to somehow keep up with everyone's spending. But then maybe smaller clubs, okay, I'm not saying Athletic Club or Osasuna are smaller in comparison, but maybe for them it's easier to embrace these models and not compete with these $100 million signings. But Barca and Real Madrid, they need to be competitive in the market to be at the top all the time. So it's a difficult situation, I would say.
I'm not by any chance an expert on either Barcelona or Real Madrid when it comes to finances, but I know a little bit more about Barcelona than Real Madrid. But Real Madrid fundamentally have the same model, right? Barcelona is about 140,000 socios. Real Madrid has about maybe 100,000, maybe a little bit more. I'm not really sure about the number. But what they're talking about, at least according to the Athletic, what they're saying is that they want to separate Real Madrid out into 2 legal entities. One would handle the football operations, the team, the coaching, the sporting, and all of that stuff. The other one would be the management and the business and the commercial side. They have a large stadium. They want to use it for different reasons and so on. Events, sponsorship deals, everything else commercial, which is where external third parties could buy shares or invest money, which is, if you think about it, the Bayern model.
Where the 50+1.
Similar model, however you structure it, and Bayern have survived all these years with that 50+1 model. I think what it seems like on the surface of it, we don't know the details. We have to be realistic. Let's assume Barcelona has 140,000 socios, right?
Yeah.
Each one of them pays 1,000 euros a year. They don't. Let's assume they do 2,000 euros a year. None of them do actually. Maybe some with VIP seats and so on, but not all of them. 100%. That's 280 million euros. That's
Right.
it. Barcelona's expenses are close to $1 billion with debt of 2.7 billion. So you can very well understand the socio model, while it's romantic and it's nice and it's good and it's the way the club has been built. It's not nearly enough to run a business if you're thinking of it from a business point of view. It's not.
Right, yeah.
Advertisement is what runs the business. Partnership is what runs the business. And currently, let's just be honest, what is Barcelona, but fully owned by Goldman Sachs. Like literally
Right.
fully owned. That's basically what it is. We don't say it, but that's where the money is coming from right now. It's the socio model should say, yes, it should stay. And I don't think what Madrid is saying is that it will go away. They're saying that, yes, there will be socios who will be involved with the football where the fans are. But from a business point of view, they have to raise funds. So you have to find an entity worth selling, which is what Barca are doing. They're selling VIP seats. Why are they doing that? Because they need money. We want the Haalands of the world. We also socio model. A socio model will not get you one Haaland.
To your point, it's difficult to buy a Haaland with just while being a member-based, member-owned club. But if we go back into the years of financial or healthy financial environment of Barcelona, we had the funds to go into the market and buy players and even get players of higher quality, players who could, in theory, be starters and be the superstar for Barcelona. But then somewhere along the line, okay, we know the Bartomeu presidency that caused us these issues in the first place. So I think there was a point where Barca were financially very healthy and they could compete. Barca are different because of La Masia, right? That's when we can't really go out and buy players. We'll just create superstars, right? That's what we'll hopefully keep doing, and that's what we are doing right now. But to your point, there comes a time when you won't really find what you're looking for in the academy, and you will need to go out there and outsource that, find somewhere else. And to me, the most concerning part is that Real Madrid, of all clubs, Real Madrid, who are, by the way, quite healthy financially compared to
Very,
us, very
very.
healthy. So even a club of that financial reality at the moment is starting to look into other things, other solutions, because they feel that they can't compete. And if they can't compete, a club that has what, 12 million euros debt, which is nothing, right?
Trust.
So for a club that size, that's basically zero. If they are looking into that, and you could argue, yes, Madrid are different than Barca, and they are more focused maybe on finding the superstars, Galacticos out there and bringing them to their club. But at the same time, if they are looking into these options, should we be concerned? We as Barcelona, who are still trying to get out of a black hole, financial black hole, and even when we do get out, which we will, according to some predictions just now, is there ever going to be a time when Barca are financially ready to compete with these giants, state-owned clubs that have unlimited funds? It seems there. That is my concern.
I'm not an expert on Real Madrid. I don't know these numbers for sure, so I'll use ballpark numbers, what I've read here and there. If I'm wrong, apologies. I'm not trying to make things up, but just to give context, as Dom said, their net debt is about just 12 million euros. They have a stadium debt about 1.34, which we also have 1.5, but theirs is over 30 years at 3%, which is incredible because the stadium debt refinancing is about 60 million to 70 million euros a year. They are making almost between 200 to 300 million in cash reserves every year from operations, right? For them to pay that 60 million, no big deal. They can do it every year quite easily. If you look at their EBITDA and debt, that's almost 0:0. So they're in a very good financial situation. Madrid is not the Galactico Madrid anymore. They spent a lot when they got in and a lot of players together. But before that, they had almost 5 years of complete austerity. They were not buying anybody. And there's a reason for that, correct? Now, to your point, yes, there was a time when Barca was also creating close to about $1 billion in revenue. They're just doing that right now. So we will cross the billion. And you're right, that's a lot of money. But let's talk about the three clubs that we all need to talk about. One is Paris Saint-Germain, one is Manchester City, and the other one is Newcastle. Newcastle is still a work in progress, but let's look at Man City. How many leagues have they won? Say 5, back to back. They were nowhere.
Yeah.
And now they're the number one club in Europe, all in the span of 16, 17 years. Let's look at Paris Saint-Germain. They literally brought a Champions League. They literally bankrolled the Champions League in. Nothing wrong in that. I'm not criticizing them. Good for them that they're able to do. The football was good. They're getting their act together. But here's the thing. These clubs every year in the market can go and spend $300 million or $400 million. And that will be another check from somebody and will not be questioned because they have an endless line of credit. Well, they are owned by the Abu Dhabi group. Newcastle owned by the Saudi PIF group. The influence of Qatar and Saudi Arabia in English football and French football and how much they had invested.
Imagine being a club that can every summer buy 2 Haalands if they needed to. 2 Haalands every transfer window. Here's a Haaland for you in January. Here's another Haaland for you in the summer in case you need him. So that's crazy. Of course, we do have the financial fair play, which we'll talk about a bit later. But just to put those numbers into perspective, this is how powerful it sounds on paper.
How do you compete with them year after year? Yes, we have competed with them till now, but it is only going to get worse. So if you do not have a war chest, right, and if you have to function under the rules of La Liga and financial fair play, then you need incredible income to come in.
And I think that this Madrid structure that you mentioned earlier, which is basically there's two entities, right? One deals with one thing and the other deals with the other thing. Is that the middle ground we're talking about here? Because you still get to keep this democratic ownership. The Socios won't disappear just out of nowhere, right? There's still the community. There's still the romantic aspect that we keep mentioning. But you also do have, on the other hand, funds coming in from the state-owned part, right? So maybe that's the middle ground that they're trying to achieve. And now, obviously, for Barca, for us, for Culés, at the moment, that seems like blasphemy. Seems like, okay, we're betraying all of our values. But maybe if you look in the not-so-distant future, the 5 years, 6 years, maybe even 10 years, let's say, something like that, is it possible that Barca might be not forced, but might consider something similar?
Why do we have to wait till the future? Last year with Bridge Invest Studio, what did they try to do? They tried to create what is that? That is an entity in which people can buy shares. So Laporta has already tried that. Barca's already done that. It hasn't worked out because Barca's situation is very different from Madrid. And it won't work for Barca until they get their finances in order. So for Barca, even if they want to do it, they can't. They can go into private equity because somebody will buy them out as a depreciated asset and make money out of them. Barca and Madrid are not in the same place. Madrid can pull this off because the financial situation is incredible. Ours isn't. And if ours is tomorrow, I won't be surprised if they do it immediately because, as I said, funds are required. So either they do it very overtly, or they don't do it overtly, but they still do it. When you sell off your entire seats to some Saudi company, what are you doing? Are you not doing that? You're doing exactly that. When you sell off your catering to some company from America, right? You're doing the same thing. So it's not that Barca are doing any different. Now, how do you position it, market it, package it? Different stories altogether. I won't be surprised if Barca will do it as well. Only for Barca, it will take more than 4 or 5 years. Find us worthy of investing in because they don't want to carry the risk. They just want the profits. And right now with Barca, there are risks.
We can talk about romance all day, Dev, and it's easier for us Barca fans because our club has been successful, right, in the modern history, very successful. So we can have the romance and have the results at the same time. But what happens if the results stop? Would the romance stop as well? Would the fans be like, okay, we're not performing at the level that we should be performing? Let's consider a change in the whole system.
Which of these fans who are who love the model, right? And there are many of them. How many of them will be okay when we don't win? And they will say, it's fine, we have not won. It's okay. We are playing with homegrown players. We are playing great football. And that's all that we care about.
Barca, as a business, as a brand, they can't allow to be just a club that plays nice football but wins nothing.
So let's keep moving with the story. Yes. I think the next thing that we wanted to talk about was something far more insidious. Think about Lamine Yamal's crazy rise to fame overnight, literally overnight. And with everything that has changed, like today, everything's on TikTok, everything's on everywhere, right? The explosion of fame is much more. But if you look at the media coverage, the consistent scrutiny, the negative articles, the false articles that are happening, he's a still 17-year-old kid. This alone can drive people crazy away from the focus area and just burn out, right? And it's such possibility of that. And it's happening right in front of our eyes.
It is worrying because on one hand, you have this superstar in making or superstar who already is a superstar, right? And the media are trying to find as much dirt. They're trying to find cracks in the armor. They're trying to find anything because whatever story you have that involves Lamine Yamal it will go viral. It's negative and it will go viral. It's like these journalists are trying to make a name by using Lamine Yamal's stardom at this moment. And it's easy because he by his nature, he is a bit flamboyant, he's a bit likes to party, he's very young, obviously, so that ties into it. And he likes a good time. And this is where the trouble begins. Because they will catch him in these dubious, let's call them, or questionable moments or events.
And there's a lot of commentary around it, where even football players, ex-football players get involved and they pass comments on how he should live his life. It is very risky what's happening right now, because it's very easy to lose your head in the fame, the money, the adulation that comes. We have seen lots of players who have great potential and end up nothing. So I think, I'm sure from the club to his agents, to his family, close surrounding, whoever consults him or whatever, there has to be a very protective action in safeguarding him from some of this. There's so much negativity about a 17-year-old kid. Like, he's arrogant, he's this, he's that. Why would you have so many opinions about a young kid?
It is. But also being a superstar at Barcelona, because any player at Barca feels like they are under a spotlight, especially when you are Lamine Yamal, who is only 18 years old and he's risen to stardom overnight. I think that makes things so much worse. That combination of being a Barca player and being a superstar player and being young as well, I think all of that culminates in what we're seeing right now. I don't know how Lamine himself would react if he was more disciplined by the club. When you look at Messi, for example,
I don't think they like discipline.
they don't like discipline. They do not. But for Messi, he wasn't put in a bubble. I'm not saying that, but he was protected. There was efforts from the club to make sure that his talent won't go to waste. It was a different time. It was 20 years ago, whatnot. So
There was no
times were
TikTok.
different. There was no TikTok, because now even the fans have influence over social media on what players do and how they react, how they feel. But back then, you didn't have. So maybe there should be some effort from the club to say, okay, Lamine, you have the power in your legs and your mind to be the best player for the next 10 years, 20 years even, right? Because he's 18. It's ridiculous, right? But there has to be some effort, and this is a two-way street, right? There's effort from the club, but also Lamine needs to be able to accept that there has to be some constraint. When you give media these crumbs that they will use against you every single week or every single day, but also retain the best possible level of yourself, the media will play with your head. And if your head is not in football, in professional football, then there's no way you can stay at the top for very long. That's the only thing there.
Yeah, he needs that guidance right now more than ever. Once he becomes a little bit older, he'll be mature. He'll know how to tackle with this, but he's too young right now. Enough about Lamine. Barca have continued or extended their Spotify sponsorship till 2030, and the naming rights till about 2034. I think among all the sponsorships that Barca have done from a brand perspective, I think this is one of the better ones from a positive influence perspective, and the name and just becoming more aligned with the youth or appealing to a more youthful audience. I think that's good. I think from a money perspective, they're talking about 80 million, including the naming rights. But if that's true, then by the time the Spotify time ends in 2030 for the sleeves and whatever, this would have been worth 660 million euros over 10 years, which is phenomenal. And you think about, okay, of that debt, one brand paid out 700 million euros, right, of the 1.7. That's 50% by just one brand. Then you have Nike and so on. So it's incredibly important, this sponsorship, more so because of the time when it was done. This didn't come when Barca were top of the top. This came when Barca was at its lowest. And I would say the marketing around it has been phenomenal. It's not on your face, subtle most of the time, but it works. And it's been one of the better marketing initiatives from Barcelona. That is, and I'm happy about that. Yes, with any good thing, there will be criticism as well about why Spotify, why not somebody else, and so on. And that agreed. But for Barca, given the situation that they were, I think this is an excellent piece of news.
It is. And it's nice to hear that, because when it comes to Barca finances, we're used to getting the bad news, right? We're used to, okay, here's more debt, here's another failed project, here's another failed sponsorship. And this is a little bit of good news, especially when you hear other news like Real Madrid considering such drastic changes, and they are a much healthier, financially healthier club than us. Then it kind of makes you think. It makes you think a lot about where we are, who we are, and what we should do. Should we abandon our values just because we can't compete financially? It's a very difficult thing as a fan to digest, but also I'm sure the club and Laporta and everyone in there are also scratching their heads and thinking, okay, what is the next best move? And in comes the sponsorship that kind of, as you said, in a very trying times for us, it seems like a ray of light, if you will. And I know it's very funny to mention your Spotify as being a bright light of Barcelona, but here we are, right? Financially, it is what we need. Financially, it will help us get where we want to be as well. And I think it's a good way to end the podcast there on a slightly more positive note.
But with that, I think that was a good wrap up. I think we talked about Frankie de Jong and his renewal, which was great. We talked about the Socio model and the future of the game, which is a much bigger topic, to be honest, and maybe
It
one
is, it
into a bigger thing around it. We talked about with Lamine what's happening. And then finally, we looked into the Spotify Camp Nou deal that has just happened with Podcast. That was good.
I think this was just a mix of good and bad, which is what we used to at this point. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe to Fullback. It means a lot. Your support has always been great, and it is why we keep doing these things. Please do leave a review if you can. Just give us some feedback if you have any. And as always, just keep watching and keep supporting us and the club. Let your friend know, okay, these guys are going strong. They're still there. They're still alive. They're still kicking. And you know what? We will be back after Girona. That's the first thing to look out for. We're back with some pieces on the blog, and obviously we'll be back with some shorts and some other videos. We'll preview El Clasico because that's also coming very shortly. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll have more and more better news to share with you guys. Until then, as always, stay safe and Visca.
Visca Barça, guys.